Hello and welcome to GTU Active Learning Video Communication series, and in the series this session on English, where we are going to discuss the second unit from your section 2A, that is comprehension passages, and the passage is titled What We Must Learn from the West. What we must learn from the West. This is a passage which is adapted from a very famous speech given by a very famous celebrity, very famous Indian celebrity, Narayana Murthy. And this passage discusses what are the values that we must inculcate in our lives to be globally successful and make India globally successful. So, at the end of this session, you will be able to comprehend the passage, of course, because this is an exercise in comprehension. Update your vocabulary, practice model auxiliaries, tenses, connectors, prepositions, and the passive. These are the grammatical items that you have already learned in the section on grammar. And make statements describing general conditions and habits. So these are the goals of our session today. If you look at the smaller goals of our session today, which is going to be for 1 hour, the smaller goals are list what we must learn from the West. These are the unit specific goals. Understand why we must learn from the West. Learn some values honored universally. So these are the smaller goals, specific goals of the unit. But before we begin, let me ask you something. What do you think are the points you would like to list when you want to talk about India and Indians? For example, let me ask you, how do you feel being an Indian? What are your feelings? What are your attitudes when you introspect about being an Indian? I'm sure you are going to tell me that some of you are very proud to be Indians, and we should always be proud of whatever country we belong to. But at the same time, as Narayana Murthy suggests, we must also be introspective, and we should not turn complacent. So if I ask you, how do you feel about being an Indian? Probably you are going to tell me that you are very proud of India's culture and heritage, you are proud of India's values, and we have a lot of talks about how India has deep-rooted values, which we appreciate for sure. But at the same time, every civilization has its own values, and we must look at these values in particular. So when you look at some other civilizations, we can always learn from them. And in this passage, we are going to look at some of the values which Western civilizations practice better than us, or probably they practice more than us. And so gradually they have come to be identified with Western civilization rather than Indian civilization. So this is not to say that India does not have those values, but Western civilizations, Western countries have these values better practiced. So that is the first question. Sometimes you might even feel that being an Indian is not so much a matter that you should be proud of, and I'm sure you can see around you some of the things that you do not like or you do not appreciate, and we must work towards improving those things. My second question is to ask you about the writer, about the author, Narayana Murthy. Most of you would be familiar with this name, Narayana Murthy, but some of you may not have heard about this name. Personally, I believe that's not possible that you haven't heard of Narayana Murthy, but Narayana Murthy is a very prominent figure, not only in India but across the globe. Here are some fast facts about Narayana Murthy. He is his worth, his assets, his net worth is 104 crores. That is 1.4 billion American dollars. 104 crores rupees, right? Dollars. Yeah. These are dollars. So $1.4 billion as of October 2012. So these are the recent facts. At present he is 66, and of course he has earned his name and his wealth from software industry. He is one of the pioneers of Indian software industry. His qualification, if you look at, he is Master of Science from Indian Institute of Technology, and if you look at Forbes list, he is ranked as at number 42 in India's richest individuals, at number 764 in the list of Forbes billionaires around the world, and number 31 in India. That is, he's ranked at he's ranked at number 31 among the billionaires in India. So these are some of the fast facts. You might also know him as the founder chairman of Infosys, which was established in 1981, and at present he is the chairman emeritus. He still holds the title chairman, but he is not the executive chairman. He is chairman emeritus. He has recently decided to be chairman emeritus rather than executive chairman. So Narayana Murthy is not an unknown name to us. Here are some of the awards and honors that he has received. If you look at the list, there are so many medals, so many awards he has earned for himself, and the authorities who have awarded Narayana Murthy are from across the globe. You can see the Hoover Medal, which is from United States of America. You can see also in 2007 he received Commander of the Order of the British Empire, which is of course from British government, and he has also received Indian honors like Padma Vibhushan and Padma Shri, apart from the engineering honors like in 2007 IEEE Ernest Weber Engineering Leadership Recognition. So his awards are global, and so is his reputation. And in this section, I mean, if you look at your textbook, almost all the passages that you have for comprehension and the 3 stories that you have are very interesting. They are an interesting read, and when you look at them, you will see that they have certain qualities, and apart from providing you an interesting read and an exercise in grammar and other things in language, these are interesting passages to read, and you can learn a lot from them. So we are going to read and we are going to discuss this session. In this session, Narayana Murthy's passage. Infosys, this logo probably is better known than Narayana Murthy is, and probably you can now associate Narayana Murthy with this logo, Infosys. And if you look at the tagline that Infosys has, powered by intellect, driven by values. And interestingly, in all Narayana Murthy's talks, interviews, discussions, his speeches, you will see there is an increasing emphasis on values. And the tagline also is powered by intellect, driven by values. Of course, we require intellect, but nevertheless, this intellect should be driven by values. So even in education, we have a lot of talk about value education, and value education has been introduced as a subject in our studies in schools, and values are now recognized even in education. Indian society traditionally has always been value driven, but over the years somehow some values are not so much well followed in Indian societies, and that's the point that Narayana Murthy thinks we must improve. So what authorizes him to speak about values and about Indian culture, or whatever word of advice he has for us? So, as he himself declares, his contemplation and years of experience, organizational and international success, and extensive global travel. Infosys being one of the global well-known companies, Infosys has a rich experience of working with people from around the globe. And as Narayana Murthy believes, organization is a kind of miniature of the larger society. So you can see that Narayana Murthy introduces this section by saying that he comes from a company which is based on values, and therefore his organizational success has something to do with the larger model of our country or of our society. An extensive global travel. It's not only the travel in the country, which of course he has done extensively, but it is also extensive global travel. And before we begin, let me also tell you that I would rather suggest that you keep this textbook with you at all times, and you can go to Unit 2 in Section 2A, Comprehension Passages, what we must learn from the West. And while we are discussing this lesson, you can go towards the you can go through the passages, and you can read, or whatever lines you think are important you may underline, and you can ponder over it later on. So let us begin. Okay, here is one book that Narayana Murthy has authored, and the book is titled A Better India, A Better World. And here he talks about his ideas at length, the same ideas essentially that we have in this section. And before we begin with the lesson, let me ask you to watch this video. Okay, we can watch the video later if time permits, but here is the title: Not an Interrogative Construction, What We Must Learn from the West. Usually we believe that anything that we start with what is usually a question statement, an interrogative statement, but here it is not an interrogative construction. But I would like you to focus on three words: we, must, and the West. The question is, who does this word we refer to? And apparently, as you read in the passage, you realize that we actually refers to India, we the Indians. Must, you have learnt in your model auxiliaries chapter that must refers to a sense of obligation and a sense of compulsion. As these things stand, Narayana Murthy finds it is absolutely compulsory, it is absolutely obligatory for us to learn from the West if we want to succeed globally. And the West refers to the countries which are located towards the West from India, but chiefly, as we know, the developed countries, North America and the European countries. So what are those values that we must learn from the West? That is what this passage deals with. The passage is a speech delivered by Narayana Murthy, and the speech was delivered in 2002. As early as in 2002, it was delivered almost 10 years back, more than 10 years back, and it was delivered at Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management Studies, where Narayana Murthy was there to award degrees. And so 10 years have passed since the speech was delivered, but you can still, when you read this speech or this passage, you can still see the relevance of the speech is still there. So it is not an outdated speech. So it was basically a speech. Now this passage, as you have, is modified from the speech, and at the end of this session I'll tell you, if you want to read the full text of the speech, it is available on the internet. As they say, a well-organized discourse is the reflection of well-organized mind. And as we have Narayana Murthy, a successful celebrity, we can see the reflection of his organized thinking in this passage. So the structure of this passage is like this. There is a key idea in each of the paragraphs in your book. For your convenience in reading, each paragraph or each key idea is titled in bold. So there is an introduction and then there is a title in bold that introduces the key idea which is going to be discussed in the passage. So this passage is apparently a collection of several small modules. In each of the paragraphs, in each of the module, you have one key idea. Apart from ideas, in each paragraph you have some point or some arguments which are then substantiated with concrete first-person examples and analogies. Narayana Murthy makes no point without justifying it. So there are strong examples or analogies and conclusions. I mean, at the end of the paragraph you have some conclusion, some take-home advice that Narayana Murthy offers. So this is the structure. If you look at the key ideas, you have India and the West. I mean, the stereotypes, if you look at that, what we usually believe about India and what we usually believe about the West. How many of you think that the Western countries and the Western value system is not as good as India or as good as Indian values? So probably you would be thinking that the Western values are not probably inferior, but these are stereotypes. And as Narayana Murthy says, that we are a society that is living in past. So we always brag about our past with as little accomplishment as we have in the present. So there are Western values and India, how they stand towards each other, Indian attitudes, how we can benefit, and what we must learn and do. So when we comprehend the passage, we will be looking at these examples. And let me tell you that comprehension passages have been an integral part of English textbooks for so long. And when you look at a comprehension passage, you must look at several things. One is, of course, you must look at language use, which includes grammar, vocabulary. And the other thing is you must look at the conceptual skills, how to organize the ideas or how to present an argument or how to